3 through 5 is where it's tougher. And it's really easy to put the SEC 1 and the Big Ten 2. Number 3 is a lot harder. And this year, after last weekend, it finally cleared up for me. The third best conference in 2022 is the Pac-12. And this is a big development for them because over the last few years, I think it was pretty easy to put them at 5th. And now they're at 3rd. And let me tell you why. Let's go through the criteria. How good and how deep is your top level? Well, this year in the Pac-12, it's pretty good, pretty deep as well. I know that Washington's not ranked, but in my mind, you've got 5 teams that are quality, top 25 caliber teams. USC, UCLA, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. Oregon has played much better since that debacle in the first week against Georgia and Dan Lanning's opener. Washington can throw the ball around, and they're in their first year with Kalen DeBoer, and Michael Penix has done a nice job. But the other 3 are really good teams. Now, Utah's already got 2 losses, and everyone's going to write them off. That's a good 2-loss team. I don't think that there's any way around that. The unfortunate one was that they lost to Florida. I don't think that they should have lost to Florida, but they did. Last week, though, we saw a team actually kind of handle Utah for the first time in a long time. Really, for the first time since Cameron Rising became their starting quarterback after the first 3-4 weeks last season. They had been on a really nice run since then, and now all of a sudden you see UCLA kind of handle them. In fact, if you go back to the start of last year, the team in the Pac-12 with the highest winning percentage is the UCLA Bruins. That's a good football team, and then we know what USC is doing. That offense is very good. Caleb Williams is in the Heisman Trophy conversation, and Lincoln Riley has made them an absolute factor. So here you go at the top level of this conference. You've got some legitimacy this year, really for the first time in a while. I know that Oregon went out on the road and beat Ohio State last year, but they didn't back it up. That wasn't a team that was backing it up. This year, I get the sense that that's just a better and deeper conference, and that goes to point number 2, how competitive and deep is your middle. And part of this is that Oregon and Washington can also be in the middle, but I'm impressed with teams like Oregon State. I'm impressed with teams out there like Washington State. Those teams, Washington State was a couple of votes away from being a top 25 team a week ago before they played USC. So these are all reasons why I think the Pac-12 is the number 3 conference right now in 2022. Last thing, brands, are they carrying the flag? Well, here you go. The 2 LA schools, undefeated. Both, I think, should be in the top 10 and are in my top 10, but UCLA just outside of the top 10 in the AP poll. They're carrying the flag. They're doing their job. So the Pac-12 for me is number 3. Number 4 was easier because really it was between 2 conferences for 3 and 4, and I landed on the Pac-12 for 3, so that means that the Big 12 is number 4. The Big 12 doesn't have the first element. They don't this year. They don't have that great, deep, high-level play. Now, I would make the argument that they're the most competitive and they're the most deep throughout the conference. Right now, in last place in that conference are 2 teams that I think are both decent. I think OU is much better than what they're showing right now, and Iowa State, and they're last right now. So there's not an easy game in that 10-team conference. There's just not. Kansas is not easy. West Virginia is not easy. So they're as competitive and deep throughout their conference as any. The problem is at the top level, I just don't sense that they've got a team that can go out there and compete with the best teams in the country, except for Texas. And if Texas was undefeated right now, they would have been number 3, but they're not. So they wound up at number 4. Because in that third element, are your brands carrying the flag? That's where the Big 12 falls woefully short. Their 2 biggest brands, and I don't care if they're leaving anytime soon, their 2 biggest brands are OU and Texas. And to this point, OU has been really a complete disappointment after the first 3 weeks. I've never seen a team fall off a cliff as fast as OU has, and I hope that they get it back and quickly, and I think that they will to some degree. I don't know how great they're going to be, but to some degree. And Texas has those 2 losses. And by the way, once Quinn Ewers got injured by Alabama, I told you that was going to happen on this program. If you've listened to the Joel Klatt show, you know that next week I came out and I said, listen, Texas, at their best with Ewers, is really good as any team in America. Now that they don't have him, you look in the next few weeks, they will lose before Red River. I said that verbatim, and they did, and they lost to Texas Tech. They do have great depth, though, as we all know, and I think that we can all see that conference is going to be very difficult to win. More on Texas coming up. That leaves one conference for number 5, and it's the ACC, and I think it's pretty clear. Now, while they check the box at the top, Clemson is very good, and that's a team that's probably going to be in the CFP. Outside of that, do you really know or trust anything else in that conference? Because I don't. Let's just put it to you this way. If you were to take any team not named Clemson and put them up against any of these Big 12 teams, do you really feel good about the ACC's matchup? Do you really feel good about North Carolina State facing TCU? I mean, I don't. Do you really feel good about Wake Forest facing Texas? I mean, I don't. So ACC, I'm sorry, but you're number 5. Clemson is carrying the torch. They're your biggest brand at this point. It sure would help if Florida State and Miami could get back to where they have been in their past. But right now, the ACC is falling short on a lot of different criteria. I don't know how competitive and deep their middle is. And I know I told you I wasn't going to focus on who your worst team is. And up to this point, I haven't focused on who your worst team is. The problem in the ACC is that there's like 4 or 5 really bad teams. Okay, so listen, if you want to, like, Northwestern's no good this year. They're 1-5. Vandy, yeah, we get it. It's Vandy. In the Pac-12, unfortunately, and this pains me greatly, it's Colorado. But by the way, someone's going to be you coaches out there, Colorado's a good job. You got that? You hear me? You hear what I'm talking about? Colorado's a good job. Having said that, Colorado, they're not very good right now. But you got 4 or 5 of those in the ACC, and so the ACC winds up at number 5. So, hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.